The intergalactic exhibition of technological supremacy was the grandest event in the universe, where the mightiest civilizations showcased their warships. It was not just a competition, it was a statement of power, a reminder of which species ruled the stars. Thousands of alien races gathered in a massive space station orbiting a dying star, their fleets gleaming under the artificial lights. The greatest warships ever built floated in the void, monstrous machines with impenetrable shields, weapons that could split moons, and engines that could bend space itself. The audience, made up of the most elite beings in the galaxy, watched as the contenders arrived, each more advanced than the last. Then, something unexpected happened. A small, outdated human ship appeared on the battlefield, its dull metal hull scarred and worn, looking as though it had been dragged out of a museum. The moment it appeared, the crowd erupted into laughter. The Exelthor, a reptilian species known for their massive war fleets, were the first to mock it. "This is a joke, right?" one of their commanders sneered. "Is humanity actually entering this competition with a relic from the past?" The other races joined in, their amusement echoing through the arena. The human ship was nothing compared to the leviathans floating beside it. It had no visible energy shielding, no massive cannons, no sleek design. It was ugly, slow-looking, and utterly unimpressive. But what puzzled some of the more observant spectators was its complete silence. Unlike the other ships that transmitted signals, broadcasts, and challenges, the human vessel remained quiet. No communication, no boastful display, just eerie, unwavering silence. To further humiliate them, the Exelthor, captain of the Dominator, one of the most powerful battleships ever created, decided to make a spectacle out of humanity. He issued a challenge, not expecting a response. It was meant to be a joke, an act to entertain the audience. "Let's see if the primitive species has the courage to face true power," he said, grinning. Then, suddenly, a message appeared on every screen in the arena. 2 simple words: challenge accepted. The laughter stopped. The battle began. The Dominator wasted no time. Its targeting systems locked onto the human vessel, ready to end this farce in seconds. The first barrage of plasma bolts was fired, streaking across space with the intensity of miniature suns. But before they could hit, the human ship moved. Not in a predictable, calculated manner like the AI-driven ships of the advanced civilizations, but in a way that defied every expectation. It twisted, rolled, and darted through space with a precision that should have been impossible for something of its design. The plasma bolts missed completely. The Exelthor captain frowned. He ordered a second volley, this time adjusting for evasive maneuvers. Again, the human ship slipped through the attack, dodging in ways no automated system could have anticipated. The audience, once amused, now watched in stunned silence. For the first time, the Exelthor captain felt uneasy. "Increase tracking speed. Adjust fire patterns," he barked. The Dominator recalibrated its targeting system, unleashing a relentless storm of energy. Yet, the human ship danced between the blasts with terrifying accuracy. It wasn't technology that was allowing this. It was the pilot. Every other species relied on AI for combat, trusting cold, calculated algorithms to fight their battles. But this human was piloting manually, making split-second decisions that no machine could predict. It was not just skill, it was instinct. Then, the human ship struck. In a flash, it closed the distance, weaving through the firestorm like a phantom. It unleashed a precise burst of laser fire not aimed at the Dominator's weapons, shields, or engines, but at something far more critical, its targeting systems. The Exelthor captain's eyes widened as his screens flickered and went dark. "Impossible," he hissed. The Dominator could no longer lock onto the human ship. It had been blinded. The battle had shifted. The hunter had become the hunted. Panic spread among the Exelthor crew. The human ship moved unpredictably, striking at key weak points, disabling rather than destroying. The shields flickered, the engines sputtered, the main cannons went offline one by one. The once mighty Dominator was now floating defenseless. The Exelthor captain tried to retreat, but the human pilot had already anticipated his move. With a final burst of energy, the human ship fired a single, well-placed shot at the Dominator's propulsion system, sending it into a slow, humiliating spiral. Silence filled the arena. No one laughed anymore. The same species they had mocked had just humiliated one of the strongest warships in the galaxy. Then, the human ship sent one final message. Shall we continue? It was not arrogance. It was not a threat. It was a simple, chilling question that sent a wave of unease through every species watching. If a lone human with a so-called primitive ship could do this, what could an entire fleet of them accomplish? Realizing the battle was lost, the Excelsior captain reluctantly conceded. The human ship powered down its weapons and, without another word, turned and left the battlefield. No victory speeches, no boasting, just quiet, controlled departure. But the impact it left behind was undeniable. The audience watched it vanish into the void, knowing that something had just changed. A new fear gripped the galaxy, a whisper that would spread through every system: never underestimate humanity. And so, the legend of the primitive ship and its terrifyingly skilled pilot began. The laughter had barely died down when the challenge was issued. The Excelsior commander, still amused by the sight of the human ship, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Let's make this interesting," he announced to the arena filled with thousands of spectators. His voice, amplified across the vast halls of the galactic exhibition, dripped with arrogance. "I challenge the human vessel to a simulated battle against the Dominator." The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter, convinced this was nothing more than a formality, a way to humiliate the so-called primitive species before the real competition began. No one expected a response. Humans were new to the galactic stage, barely a speck in the grand history of spacefaring civilizations. Their technology was outdated, crude compared to the might of species that had ruled the stars for millennia. A fight between the Dominator and the human vessel wasn't a battle, it was an execution. But then, the unexpected happened. Screens flickered, and a single message appeared across the arena. 2 words, simple yet chilling. Challenge accepted. The silence that followed was almost unnatural. The Excelsior commander narrowed his eyes, his amusement slowly turning into curiosity. "They really think they stand a chance?" he muttered under his breath. No one knew the name of the human pilot. No one had seen their face. There had been no transmissions, no introductions. Just this one message. The challenge was locked in. There was no turning back now. The battlefield was a simulated war zone, a perfect replica of real combat. Every weapon, every movement, every strategic choice would be calculated in real time, and any damage inflicted would reflect how the battle would have gone if fought in reality. The Dominator took its position, its massive frame casting a shadow over the tiny human vessel. It was a fortress in space, a machine of destruction designed to crush entire fleets. "Let's end this quickly," the commander said, signaling for the battle to begin. The first barrage was fired within seconds. The Dominator unleashed a storm of plasma bolts, its cannons roaring to life with terrifying precision. The human ship was right in the crosshairs, an easy target with nowhere to run. The crowd leaned forward, expecting a spectacular explosion. But nothing happened. The plasma bolts streaked through space, missing their target entirely. The human ship had moved not in a straight line, not in the predictable manner of an AI-controlled vessel, but in a way that defied every expectation. It twisted, darted, and weaved through the onslaught with an unnatural grace. The Excelsior commander frowned. "Adjust targeting. Recalculate trajectory." His gunners obeyed, modifying their attack patterns to account for movement. The next volley was fired, this time with advanced tracking algorithms ensuring that escape was impossible. And yet, impossibly, the human ship continued to evade. It was like trying to catch smoke in a storm. It wasn't just dodging, it was anticipating. Every time the Dominator adjusted, the human pilot was already a step ahead. Panic flickered in the commander's eyes. "Increase firepower. Overload the weapons if you have to," he barked. But it didn't matter. The human ship had already begun its counterattack. It didn't rely on brute force. It didn't try to overpower the Dominator. Instead, it used precision. A single, well-placed shot struck the targeting systems of the Dominator, sending sparks through the control panels. The gunners shouted in frustration as their screens went dark. "We've lost targeting locks," one of them yelled. The Excelsior commander slammed his fist against the armrest. How is this possible? He stared at the human ship in disbelief. It was smaller, weaker, technologically inferior, yet it was winning. And then, the realization struck him. The other species had abandoned manual piloting long ago, trusting artificial intelligence to handle combat. Machines were logical, efficient, predictable. But humans? Humans were unpredictable. They relied on instinct, intuition, and sheer adaptability. Their ships may have been outdated, but their pilots were something else entirely. The Dominator was now vulnerable. The human ship moved in, exploiting every weakness, disabling system after system without ever delivering a fatal blow. It was toying with them. The once invincible warship, feared across the galaxy, was now nothing more than a drifting hunk of metal. The crowd, which had been cheering at the start, was now deathly silent. Every eye was locked onto the battlefield, watching as their expectations shattered before them. Then, the final message came. It was not a taunt, not a demand for surrender, just a simple question. "Shall we continue?" The Excelsior commander swallowed hard. His hands, which had once gripped the controls with confidence, now trembled slightly. This was no longer a game. If this had been a real battle, his ship would be nothing more than wreckage floating in the void. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to speak. "End the simulation," he ordered, his voice lacking the arrogance it once held. The battle was over. The human pilot had won. As the simulation shut down, the human ship turned and began to leave. No victory speech, no celebration, just quiet departure. The audience remained frozen, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The Excelsior commander sat in stunned silence, staring at the now empty battlefield. If humans could do this with a so-called primitive ship, what could they do with a real war fleet? A new fear began to spread among the stars. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had laughed at humanity. They had dismissed them as weak. But now they understood the truth. The era of human insignificance was over, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The laughter echoed across the vast halls of the galactic exhibition, a deafening wave of amusement rippling through the thousands of spectators gathered to witness the most anticipated event of the year. Every major species had sent their champions, warships so advanced that they seemed more like forces of nature than machines. Towering battleships, sleek destroyers, and planet-cracking dreadnoughts hovered in the designated combat zone, their hulls gleaming under artificial lights. Among them, a single ship stood out not because of its grandeur, but because of its absurdity. It was a human vessel, small, unremarkable, outdated by every technological standard. Compared to the warships around it, it was a relic, a speck of dust in a storm. The moment it appeared, the aliens burst into laughter. "Is this a joke?" The Excelsior general sneered, his reptilian features twisting in amusement. "Have the humans lost their minds? That thing wouldn't survive a training simulation, let alone a real battle." Similar remarks spread across the crowd, voices filled with scorn and ridicule. The humans had been invited to the tournament as a courtesy, nothing more than a token gesture from the greater civilizations of the galaxy. No one expected them to participate. No one expected them to actually compete. And yet, here they were. The laughter continued as the combat simulation was initialized. The human ship remained eerily silent. It simply floated, still and patient, as if it was waiting for something. The Excelsior warship, Dominion's Wrath, was the first to engage, its weapon systems locking onto the human vessel with ease. "Let's give them a show," the Excelsior captain grinned. "End this in seconds." With a single command, the Dominion's Wrath fired, unleashing a barrage of plasma blasts, each one capable of vaporizing a smaller ship instantly. The audience leaned forward, expecting the human vessel to be obliterated in a spectacular explosion. But then, something happened that no one could have predicted. The human ship moved. Not just a standard evasive maneuver, not a simple dodge. It moved with terrifying precision, twisting and darting between the incoming fire like a living creature. The plasma blasts, which had been aimed with pinpoint accuracy, struck nothing but empty space. The Excelsior captain blinked in confusion. "Impossible," he muttered, his claws tightening around the armrest. "Recalibrate targeting. Track their trajectory." The ship's AI adjusted, calculating new attack vectors in milliseconds, firing again with ruthless efficiency. But again, the human ship dodged, its movements erratic yet perfectly. The laughter in the arena faded, replaced by murmurs of confusion. The Dominion's Wrath was one of the most advanced warships in the tournament, equipped with an AI-assisted targeting system that could predict enemy movements with 99.8% accuracy. And yet, it was failing against a human pilot, flying an outdated ship. The realization began to set in, a cold, creeping sensation that spread through the audience. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a mistake. This was something else entirely. The human vessel struck back, and it did so with terrifying efficiency. It didn't unleash a full assault. It didn't try to overpower the Dominion's Wrath. Instead, it attacked precisely, targeting weak points that no AI could have anticipated. A single shot disabled the primary targeting sensors. Another blast crippled the energy distribution grid. Within minutes, the Dominion's Wrath, the pride of the Excelsior fleet, was floundering, its systems failing one by one. The Excelsior captain's confidence shattered. His warship was being dissected in real time, piece by piece, by an enemy they had dismissed as insignificant. Silence gripped the arena. The other competing captains watched in stunned disbelief, their arrogance replaced by a growing sense of dread. The humans weren't fighting like the rest of them. They weren't relying on superior firepower or overwhelming technology. They were using something far worse: instinct. Every species in the galaxy had grown reliant on AI-assisted combat, trusting cold, calculated algorithms to wage their wars. But humans? Humans still flew their ships manually. They made decisions that no machine could predict. They fought like predators. The Dominion's Wrath struggled, its massive frame now nothing more than a floating hulk, barely functional. The human ship hovered in front of it, not finishing the battle, simply waiting. Then, a single message appeared on every screen in the arena. "Shall we continue?" The Excelsior captain exhaled sharply, his pride warring with the undeniable truth. He had lost. He clenched his fists, his sharp claws digging into his palms, before forcing himself to speak. "No," he said bitterly. "We surrender." The human ship powered down its weapons and, without another word, turned and left the battlefield. No celebration, no boasting, just quiet, calculated withdrawal. The silence in the arena was deafening. Every being present, from the smallest observers to the highest-ranking officials, knew that something fundamental had shifted. The galaxy had mocked the humans, ridiculed them, dismissed them as an unimportant species barely worth noticing. But now, fear replaced laughter. The whispers began immediately, spreading like wildfire. If a single human pilot in an outdated vessel could do this, what could an entire fleet of them do? The realization sank deep into the minds of every race watching. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They were not weak. They were not primitive. They were something new, something dangerous. The tournament had been meant to showcase the might of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. Instead, it had exposed a terrifying truth. The laughter was gone. In its place, a cold, unshakable fear took root. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never forget it. The galaxy had always believed that war belonged to the powerful, to the species that ruled the stars with fleets of indestructible warships and armies that could crush entire civilizations. For centuries, the greatest empires had laughed at humanity, calling them primitive, unworthy of attention. They were new to space, inexperienced, weak. No one had considered them a threat. But that changed on the day when a single human warship entered the battlefield and rewrote history. The battle was meant to be a simple demonstration, a reminder to humanity of where they stood in the grand order of things. The Excelver Dominion had challenged them, expecting an easy victory. Their ship, the Relentless, was a behemoth, armed with the most advanced weaponry in the sector. It had destroyed entire fleets, reduced planets to dust, and crushed every opponent that dared to challenge it. Against it stood the human vessel, the Vanguard. Smaller, older, technologically outdated. The spectators laughed as they watched the ships take their positions, certain that the battle would last no more than a few minutes. But when the battle began, the laughter died. The Relentless fired first, unleashing a barrage of plasma missiles that streaked across space, each one powerful enough to annihilate a city. The human ship should have been vaporized. But in an instant, it was gone. Not destroyed, vanished. It moved faster than any warship should, twisting through space in ways that defied logic. The plasma missiles missed their mark, crashing harmlessly into the void. The Excelver captain scowled, ordering his crew to lock onto the target again, but the human ship was already moving, already adapting, like a predator circling its prey. And then it struck. The first shot from the Vanguard wasn't powerful, wasn't overwhelming, but it was precise. A single energy beam sliced through the Relentless's shield generator, sending sparks flying across the enemy ship's control deck. The Excelver crew scrambled to restore power, but before they could react, another shot followed, this time severing their propulsion system. The Relentless was now a sitting target, floating helplessly in the vast emptiness of space. The Excelver captain's confidence shattered. This wasn't possible. No ship, no species had ever been able to move like this, to fight like this. The human pilot spoke then, their voice calm, almost amused. "Shall we continue?" The Excelver captain clenched his fists. The battle was over. The Relentless, feared across the galaxy, had been defeated without landing a single hit. The realization spread through the spectators, through every alien watching the battle unfold. Humanity wasn't weak. They weren't primitive. They were something new, something unpredictable, something terrifying. The news spread like wildfire. The other great empires, once dismissive of humanity, now whispered of them with growing unease. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken their place in the stars, not as servants, not as inferiors, but as warriors. This was no longer just a battle. This was the beginning of a legend.